You've been Googling ruqya, watching videos on jinn, waswas, protection. But deep down, your soul already knows. You haven't fasted once since Ramadan. The heaviness you feel, that tightness in your chest, the fog in your mind, the whispers that won't leave. You've tried everything except the one thing the Prophet called a shield. This isn't about calories. This is spiritual war. And the battlefield is your body that you've been feeling foggy, tired in ways you can't explain. Your body works, your life moves, but your soul feels stuck. You've been Googling ruqya, watching endless videos on jinn, black magic, waswas, trying to protect yourself from the invisible, trying to understand the silent heaviness pressing on your chest. But maybe, just maybe, it's not something dark attacking you. It's something sacred you've been neglecting, because you haven't fasted since Eid. And maybe, not even then, you've done dhikr. You've played Quran in the background. You've asked for protection. But you haven't picked up the shield the Prophet swore by. In a hadith, the Prophet called fasting a shield, not a ritual, not a recommendation. A shield. From what? From waswas. From shaitan. From emotional instability. From your own nafs when it starts to whisper too loud. See, we talk a lot about fasting in Ramadan. But what about after? What about the Mondays and Thursdays? What about the white days in the middle of every lunar month? We've turned fasting into a once-a-year cleanse and forgotten that the early Muslims used it like armor. They didn't fast just to gain reward. They fasted because they knew that nothing silences shaitan like hunger for the sake of Allah. Because the Prophet said, shaitan runs through the son of Adam like blood runs through veins. So constrict him through hunger. This isn't some poetic metaphor. It's spiritual biology. Shaitan lives in the whispers, the confusion, the heaviness, the hopelessness. And when you fast, sincerely, not performatively, you cut off his path, not forever, but long enough to remember who you are. And that's what this video is about. Not calories, not weight loss, not the newest dopamine hack. This is about reminding your soul the one practice that the Prophet himself used for clarity, protection, and healing. Not once a year, but consistently. Because fasting is not just for Ramadan. It's for survival. When was the last time you fasted on a Monday? Not for a trend. Not because it was convenient, but because your soul needed silence. The early Muslims fasted like it was a lifeline, not just during Ramadan, but throughout the year, because they knew what we've forgotten. The soul decays when it's overfed, and in a world where every impulse is rewarded, where food is always available, and distractions never stop, the soul begins to drown, not from sin, but from too much ease. Fasting breaks that cycle, not by punishing your body, but by reminding your heart who's in control. There's a wisdom in feeling hunger for the sake of Allah, not because you're dieting, not because you're trying to be productive, but because hunger, when embraced intentionally, humbles your ego and quiets your desires. It forces your limbs to slow down, your mind to soften, your nafs to retreat. And suddenly, what felt loud in your head all week, the waswas, the confusion, the spiritual static, begins to fade. Why? Because fasting clears the path between you and your fitra. Think about it. Shaitan wants your body full and your spirit numb. Because as long as your stomach is satisfied and your mind is overstimulated, your soul becomes forgetful. The Prophet fasted Mondays and Thursdays, not just as habit, but as a strategy. He knew those 2 days were days of deeds being raised, days when the gates of mercy are wide open, days when your dua could be the one that shifts your entire qadr. But most of us, we let those days pass like any other, scrolling, complaining, eating, forgetting, and then we wonder, why do I feel spiritually distant? Why am I always in a fog? Why does my ibadah feel dry? You don't need a new ruqya session. You don't need to burn bukur or recite 300 ayahs tonight. You might just need to stop eating for one day, with sincerity, with humility, with intention. That's the power of fasting. It breaks the grip of what you cannot see and strengthens a part of you that never dies. Your ruh, You don't just fast to avoid food. You fast to find yourself again. Because if you ever felt like your duas are dry, like your sulla is just motion, like your heart is numb, but your body keeps going, there's a name for that. Spiritual exhaustion. And one of its most overlooked cures is fasting. Not because it fixes your external life, but because it resets your internal world. There are wounds that don't bleed, heaviness that doesn't show up on scans, and pain that you don't even know how to describe, only that it won't leave. You try journaling. You try sleep. You even try crying in sujud, but nothing changes until you fast, and suddenly the weight on your chest begins to loosen. Your eyes feel softer. Your tongue remembers dhikr without forcing it. Why? Because hunger quiets the nafs. And when your nafs is quiet, your soul finally speaks. Fasting isn't just a physical act. It's a signal, a declaration. It says, Ya Allah, I'm willing to feel emptiness in my stomach, if it means you'll feel this emptiness in my heart. And Allah hears that every time. That's why some of the most peaceful people you'll ever meet aren't the richest, aren't the loudest. They're the ones who've learned how to go hungry for the sake of Allah and found healing in the silence it brings. So if you've been feeling off lately, like your duas hit the ceiling, like your faith is low-key in survival mode, don't scroll past this advice. Pick a day, any day, fast, with intention, with dhikr, with low expectations, but high sincerity, and just watch how the fog starts to lift. Maybe not all at once, but enough for you to realize the storm wasn't outside you, it was inside, and fasting was a shelter you forgot existed. Somewhere along the way, we turned fasting into a ritual, just another box to check in Ramadan, a tradition, a habit, but it was never meant to be a seasonal routine. It was meant to be a rescue plan, a shield, a purifier, a mirror that shows you how much control your desires really have over you, and how much calmer your soul becomes without them. Because when you fast with presence, your heart begins to reset, your fitra begins to breathe, and your connection with Allah starts to repair. Not because you're perfect, but because you're finally real again. And maybe that's why you're here right now. Not because you needed another lecture, not because you were looking for a hack, but because your heart was quietly whispering, Ya Allah, I don't feel like myself anymore. And you didn't know what to do with that feeling. You just knew something was off. Something wasn't clicking. No matter how many ayahs you played, or how many self-help tips you tried, your soul was craving simplicity. It was craving the most neglected sunnah of your week, the one you thought was too small to matter, too hard to commit to, too inconvenient. But what if that fast, that one day you gave to Allah, was the exact rope you needed to pull yourself out? So start small. Pick a Monday or a Thursday. Wake up with the intention to fast for His sake. No grand announcement, no perfection, just one sincere step. Because the ones who return to Allah aren't always the ones who cry the most or pray the longest. Sometimes they're just the ones who fasted when no one else was watching, and Allah placed healing in their hunger. Speech balloon if this reminder touched something in you. Leave a dua in the comments. Ya Allah, give me the strength to fast again before the dunya consumes me. And share this video with someone else who's been feeling distant, foggy, or stuck. Maybe they don't need a diagnosis. Maybe they just need to be empty for a little while, so Allah can fill them again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.